Welcome to Public Comment. I'm John Dunbar, former mayor of Yountville.
And I'm Alfredo Petroza, former Napa County supervisor.
Thank you for joining us while we talk about politics, people, and whatever else is on our mind. We had access to information more than the average person does.
It's hard for a big corporation to cover some of the topics we're covering, but I think are so valuable.
That's what has to happen. We can't just be talking about stuff you and I care about.
Yeah.
Alfredo, kind of a special day for us here on this podcast, isn't it?
Why? Is it your birthday or what?
No, it is the wrapping up of our first season, season 1.
All right, let's drink to that.
Cheers.
Bottle Rock, you went all 3 days.
All 3 days. We're survivors. It's such a fun thing to be able to have here in our backyard, almost literally. Great music. It's a great festival. The Latitude 38 guys do such a good job.
Well, I remember I was on city council when the first one came on board. And I remember the panic. And everyone's like, how can you have 40,000 people or 30,000 people in the city of Napa? I was like, why not? Now we had to make sure like the public resources were there. But then, and we went and it was magical. And that's when I learned the lesson of what it means to have different experiences in the Valley. And not that we need to talk about Bottle Rock. That's not why we're here. We're trying to wrap up. But I remember talking to a couple from Orange County and they're like, look, we're here for the music. We normally don't come to Napa. We're not big winos. We're not big foodies. But we're here for the music. But now that we've tasted your $10, burrito and magic corn dog with caviar, we're coming back. And that's the magic, I think, of what Bottle Rock has done, John, is it's brought in different people to Napa. And it's a win-win-win, man. So congrats to the Bottle Rock guys. It's not easy to put that on. The fact that they've done it so well, they deserve a lot of credit for this.
I agree. And one of the other things that goes a little bit underappreciated, I think, is they tap into so many local businesses.
Yeah.
The restaurants, the wineries, staffs are there. And so it's really a community event, but it's a great showcase for Napa.
You have 40,000 people. Like, this is a blessing that we should have. Yes, it could be another weekend, but it's the right weekend to bring the 40,000 people into our community. Now, we only went one day. We were just in Cabo, which we had a great time. So I'm trying to recover. And we
can't keep up with, you keep giving me a hard time about my age. And I was there all 3 days, noon to 10.
You're a warrior. I have 3 kids and it's hard, but we're ready for La Onda. And to me, to have a festival like that in Napa, I think that's awesome, man. And I know it's going to be great. So again, credit to those folks for trying to do something different. And I hope the community does support it because we need that, right? And we should do country as well while we're at it. I think you need that diversity of the experience.
Well, that is happening with Live in the Vineyard. They're doing not only their rock and roll stuff, but they're also doing a country version. So we do have amazing, not just music, a lot of great live performance here in the Valley now. So,
and maybe when people are listening to these songs, they can listen to our podcast at the same time. So John, we should really get into the nuts and bolts of today. We're 20 episodes in.
This is number 21.
How are you feeling, man?
I feel great. We started this on January 16th of this year.
Good memory.
And here we are at the end of May. And we basically launched it with Barry Martin on KVON radio. And he happened to be our most recent guest just before we're doing this podcast. And so kind of brings it full circle a little bit. So 20 episodes of either the two of us talking about a variety of topics, or we also had half a dozen in-studio guests, which I really enjoyed that. I'm looking forward to kind of looking back and talking about some of the highlights that we both really enjoyed.
Well, look, season 1 is done. And like, I didn't have a lot of expectations going in. We were at Hands Across the Valley, maybe liquored up a little bit, having some cigars. And we always flirted with the idea of doing a podcast. And so we did it. And I do think we did hit on some cool issues, right? I think we blended guests with our personal commentary well. And for me, some of the highlights, like when we talked about the press and then Barry also hitting about, the sales side and production side, I think we did provide an insight that people don't pick up by reading the newspaper, and that it's hard for a big corporation to cover some of the topics we're covering, but I think are so valuable. And I think there's my phone ring.
Yeah.
That's so perfect. So appropriate.
I almost called you just to make sure it would go off during this.
But to know that, we didn't really call people out. And that's the one thing I heard. Well, can you name names? And I think part of it is we can, but also you want content that people value and people want. And we can't be like the people we were bashing of just wanting salaciousness. So we can name names, but what good does that do? I think part of what I felt we accomplished on this podcast was giving a perspective, giving a behind the scenes look on how some of this shit happens and how it works. And I think we did that with some of our guests.
I agree. And, you and I don't always agree 100% on every conversation we're having. Sometimes you're wrong. And
That's
I have to convince
That's my
you
line.
that, when we talk about some sensitive stuff,
Immigration, DEI.
right? NIMBYism, the not in my backyard folks that are just against everything because they want to complain. And yeah, we can name names of people that you often see in social media, but we don't want to encourage that either. We want to really, I think, help identify issues that are happening around us in the Napa Valley in particular, but also be fair and balanced about what we're talking about.
Well, and I think we were, right? And some of the things I would hear from people, of our good friends, telling us, we haven't had enough of ourselves, so we should just hang it up. And that's, it's funny, I actually laugh when I see that because they're so consumed by the negativity. I think what we talked about was the honest truth. We put our opinion into it, right? Which is fair, and everyone else has an opinion. And if those that don't like us want to do a podcast, it's a free country. Go ahead, right? But to me, when I look back at some of the people that we had, some of the memorable ones, not that there's some that are more special than others. And quite honestly, I don't care if people feel that. But like Peter Rumble talking about the Farm Bureau and some of this stuff they're doing to create harmony. And, we kind of give him a softball question of, is there hope? And I think he means it, right? But we need that for the sake of the industry, of the industry groups, playing nice and having a vision of how do they get through this together, right? That's one that stood out to me. Or even like Visit Napa Valley. I think Lindsay, did a good job of not saying on script, but, giving us a behind the scenes view of what it is to run an organization. And it's hard. It's hard to do this work day in and day out. And I don't think that gets seen enough from the public. And I think we lifted the curtain a little bit of like, this is raw, this is real, right? So that's just what's coming to mind for me.
I'm glad you brought that up because one of the whole reasons behind us wanting to have guests on here, not because people were tired of hearing from us, but we wanted to bring in a different perspective on certain things, especially if people are experts in their fields, whether it's Lindsay, we can go down the list of Michelle Benvenuto from Wine Growers and Barry Martin. And, but they also are people in our community.
Yeah.
And I hope the people that have listened and watched learned a little something more about each of the individuals that we had. Jason Johnson, and talking about his long storied background, growing up in Oregon and living in San Francisco, but now finding that really comfortable rural lifestyle that,
really good
that he grew up with. Yeah.
Good job.
Thank you. This is, of course, a Napa Valley cab. So, but we really did, I think, help introduce people on a personal level as well as a professional level. And I look forward to doing more of that in season 2.
Well, look, I think we did that, right? We did provide, a diversity of opinions and experiences to our guests. But I also think it's just hard though, right? Like people are busy. I went to Bottle Rock a day and you talk to some people and you had a friend's like, hey man, I'm listening to that podcast. Well done. And then the husband and wife's like, what do you mean? I'm like, oh, okay, well, let me tell you about it, right? So it's still hard to penetrate and reach people because I do think people are busy. And to me, that just magnified the issue. And we're living in a moment where people are choosing to do the things that matter to them. And they're cherry picking information as well. And that's what worries me about information and how, it gets disseminated and how, the press Democrat just got bought out, right? But by a new company. What does that mean? Right. And the register it's been on the market for a while, but no one wants to buy it apparently. But, it's what happens, right? When, the traditional media changes. And I think that's where I do think we're flirting with being onto something around podcasts, right? And we haven't touched the national stuff. We're like super focused on local stuff. I do think people need that, right? Like that's the sense I get.
It is a platform that we see in all areas, whether it's entertainment, politics, general news, whatever it is, lifestyle. We're seeing this as a platform that people are interested in. And I think part of it is because it's more interactive, engaging. Again, partly why we wanted to have guests on here.
Yeah.
But I also think that I've been hearing some feedback about, well, you guys are going to talk about what's going on nationally.
Yeah.
And said, well, you have other ways to find out, like national politics. If we want to go down that rabbit hole, we can. But I think one of the things that we have always talked about is our experience locally as elected officials. We had access to information, the dynamics that are really relevant locally,
Yeah.
more than the average person does. And that's what we wanted to try to show is when we're talking about housing or nonprofits, what is it more than just what people are seeing on a headline or on one of those social media platforms that we love so much?
But it goes to, we're kind of in the same situation, right? Like we can name names and make it more salacious and maybe people tune in, or we can stick to the purpose of why we started this, right? Which is create a channel of communication and a channel of truth and transparency where people get an insight. And I think we've done that, right? But that's the hard part, right? Because to me, the feedback I've heard is, we appreciate, the candor and they know that you and I are friends and that shows, right? Which is awesome. But I do think people need to be more engaged. And I think you can't just feed it to them all the time. It has to be matched with a desire to be informed. And I hope as people are growing up, whether they're raising the kids or retiring, there's a volume of opportunities, right? Whether it's traditional media, and if it's subscribing to the Register, power to you. If it's the Press Democrat, if it's ABC, Fox, NPR, good. Is it a podcast? Phenomenal. But step up and get engaged, challenge people. That's what's going to lead to better discourse overall. And I just see this gap right now, right? Because the people that are tuning into us, John, it's our friends. They know us, but I don't think we've surpassed, the traditional group. And I think we're providing something that I think people do want to hear, right? And so I think that's the challenge, right? As we continue into season 2, how do we challenge ourselves to reach more people? Because we're not here promoting a sponsor yet.
Not yet.
Or we're not here putting our thumb on a scale because we're not elected. We were not endorsing candidates. This is truly just a genuine outlet of information.
And I want to follow up on that based on the kinds of email comments that we have been getting. Some folks have seen every single episode. Some have watched based on the topic. But they're giving us feedback about thank you for exposing this information or talking about that, or thank you for introducing us to whichever guest.
Yeah.
Because again, it's introducing them as people, as professionals, as members of our community. It's like their kids might go to school with your kids or something like that. And so I look forward to having more engagement. You're right. People have to be kind of two ways of communication, not just sitting there listening to us. We'd like to get them engaged. Let us know what they think.
I agree. And I'm going to focus on people within my cohort, right? The working families that have young kids, because it's always easy to have an excuse, right? And I kind of, when you asked Barry about the lucky penny, I'm like, really, we're going to go down this route. But it was good because it's another side of community, right? The arts. And it's easier for me to say my kids should only play sports, right? Because that's what I grew up with. But I have to pause and say, well, no, this is a different avenue. This is a different side of the brain, as I mentioned. But we're always, not that we're providing excuses, but it's easy to say, I don't have enough time, right? Yet we all bitch about the issues like sports fields. Because that's the one thing I heard. When are you going to talk about sports fields? And trust me, we should, because the fields suck. And Napa United is an incredible organization that's doing incredible work. And this community, capital C, because it includes our cities, our school districts, they are letting the kids down. And I will say that in all the languages you want to. But that's an embarrassment of what Napa's going through, right? You travel, you see all these beautiful fields, and you're telling me Napa County and our cities and our school district has fields that the grass can't even be green, or there's gopher holes? Come on. But we're passionate about that.
Are you previewing season 2 right now? Is that what I'm hearing?
Maybe. But that's what I'm saying. We can't be issue focused and issue specific. again, some of my goals, as I think about now that we started this, how am I going to measure successes? Are we helping engage more people, not just into this podcast, but into the community, right? So if you give a shit about sports, go to the city council, right? And talk to the electeds, not just when it's the time, but more ongoing and more consistent, right? If you care about your roads, you better be doing this. Like that to me is, I see our role, John, in this is how do you create an awareness so people can get more informed, right? And I think we're going to be a conduit for that.
I think it's also important to stay connected to what is happening in local government, since we do have the familiarity, access. We know people that are decision makers, and the public, while they may want to be engaged, and some of them are, it's not always obvious how to do that. And so we can, I think, help shed a little bit of light on what is happening. And, when we talked about childcare and the drama that was uh, all around the one particular project in Alta Heights, some people never understood, well, how do I express my opinion? And so if they feel like they can reach out to us and ask, or maybe they've learned a little bit more because they listened to us have that conversation. I hope we can keep doing that and touch on things that are really relevant to people and their lives, because that's what has to happen. We can't just be talking about stuff you and I care about. It has to still connect with our audience.
Well, and I do know, so like that is an example of how an engaged community can happen. Auto Camp, and I give credit that the neighbors, were effective in killing that, which to me was terrible, because I think that could have been a great project for Napa, value add, accessibility. So you're seeing a mobilization of community, which is a positive. But how do you keep that going towards engagement, right? And I was just reading some data, school enrollment throughout the state of California is down. Like, that's not a yellow flag. That's a big red flag that we should all be mindful of. What do you think that means in the future, right? And even we're debating schools. Like I think I mentioned this when we were talking. Did we talk about schools? I don't remember.
Yeah, the public education.
Perfect. Yeah. So we have one kid in public education, 2 kids in private. And Brenda and I are flirting with it. Like, we love our private schools. My daughter goes to a Catholic school and she's singing church songs, and it's like making my mom so happy. Songs I don't even know. As a Catholic, I should. But then our son is at Vichy and he's thriving, right? He's doing phenomenal, especially in math. So like, so we're facing all these decisions, but we have to create a space to talk about them, right? But if you're seeing, like, I look at that and I'm like, who are my kids going to be around with? Because of this declining population and enrollment, like those are all the things that are happening in our community right now. And then you have a general plan update, which I want to beat you to.
Oh, thank you so much.
I wanted to beat you to that. But you have a general plan update coming up. Like, this is real stuff, like, happening right now in our community. And I hope people are not asleep at the wheel, right? And knowing what's going on, because I've seen the flashes of engagement, right? But now it has to be, how do you sustain that over time? But it's hard because government's boring. Like, who wants to go to a council meeting?
Well, the problem is it's really important. And we've talked about that before. And I think I mentioned we would have 4, 5, 6 workshops on our budget in Yountville when I was mayor.
Yeah.
Nobody would show up. And then throughout the year, as we're spending money on projects that we told everybody we were doing in the budget, like, well, you never told me about this. I didn't know about that. Because they weren't engaged. And they're engaged when it's relevant to them personally. It's important that people are engaged when it's relevant to them as a community, not just an individual. And again, I think we're shedding some light on some of the main issues that are relevant locally. We have had some people say, you're going to talk about national politics and other things like that. I don't think that's what our space is meant for. And so, I do look forward to hearing some more feedback. We're going to reach out, market ourselves a little bit more than just within people that know us already.
Yeah.
And want to hear, what do they like? What are they? Well, I'm sure they like everything, but what do they like the most?
Yeah. So I think we should mention how people can reach us, right? But in terms of, not that I want to go down this path of regrets or, what could we do better? We just baptized our kids. So maybe this Catholic thing is coming back to me, but I think we covered a lot of ground. I think on one, might have been a little hard on the county of Napa at one point, or staff. It's just all coming back. And I'll tell you, I just went through a process.
Is this confession right now?
No,
Is
it's
that
not
what we have
confession.
going on
No,
here?
I'm just telling you, like, what could we do differently? I submitted it for a lot line, and the county was phenomenal, right? So I think again, so
You're making me flash back to my altar boy days.
they did a good job, and I think they deserve that, because I think you got to give credit where credit is due, and it's easy to bash the county. Now I'm going through a remodel, so I'll let you know how that one goes. But I think so much of it was government that we talked about. I think we got to highlight the good stuff. And I think it would be great to bring more perspective, maybe retired staff from the cities and counties, right? Some come to mind, like Vince Smith, the former director, because it's hard to do those jobs too. And I think we talked a lot of time about the other side of the ledger, which is the elected officials. I think we can do a better job maybe in season 2 of highlighting the professional staff, of what those jobs are like. Joe T, would be a great person to talk about, his work in Yountville and, administration of towns and cities. So I think that's something that I when I look forward to next season, is maybe engaging that side a little bit too.
Well, public comment napa@gmail.com is one way people can reach out. And we've been getting some nice comments.
We have some fans.
We even have a couple that are like you said, yeah, why don't you guys shut up? Your time is over. It's like, no.
I don't read those.
Yeah, I know, I read them to you. But we want people to be engaged and want this to be something that they look forward to hearing us talk about, or having somebody that's, a part of our community here. So that's going to be probably the easiest way to do it, is to reach out to us by that email account. Certainly making comments on all the platforms we're on right now. Principally, we're YouTube, Spotify, Apple Music. We may be adding some other platforms for season 2. And we're going to take a little bit of a break here in June.
You need a break. I know you're exhausted. This has been hard on you.
Well, it's been 20 weeks of, and I'm going
to
break the barrier here and just look over to our incredible friend and producer, Caleb, who has been a master of keeping us on point and making us sound. I'm going to cut this part.
No, you're not. But I remember to that point, when we first started,
you can bleep it like Barry's profanity.
When we first started, I was like, well, we can just hold up our iPhone and do something like that. And we've done a great job, and Caleb has made us look really good.
And we're totally spoiled now.
We are
1700 film, and he is the best, absolutely the best. And we appreciate his wife Heather and his kids, that we dominate so much of his time to help us put this thing together. We thank you so much. You cannot edit this out. I know he loves the spotlight,
of course,
but I'm excited for season 2. I'm also excited to take a little break. There's a lot that goes into putting this together, mostly by Caleb. But
I had to cut some lunches short, to be fair.
Yes, and sometimes you didn't cut them short.
It's hard. It's hard to be rude to people.
But there might be some new looks for season 2 in a few weeks. You might see a lot of branding here if we're successful. But also, I really do look forward to digging deeper into the relevant topics. We want to continue to dig deep into our beautiful Napa Valley wine. And
it's a big pour today.
I will say, when we had Barry on, it's the first time we've ever had to stop and find another bottle of wine to keep going. Now we have precedent.
Well, look, this was something that you and I wanted to do. We've done it. I feel good about it. It has given me a perspective on what it's like, to have the power of a microphone in a different way. Because we've always had the microphone, John, as elected officials, but to be able to know that you can reach people, I think it is a privilege. It's not a mic that we just used to bash, right? Because I think a lot of people thought we were just going to go hard on all the people we don't like.
You never know what happens in season 2.
Yeah, but it has given me that lens of what it's like to report and to provide information, and the responsibility that comes with it, right? Because this is going to live here, right? If we want to hear this in 10 years, it's going to be on the cloud somewhere, right? So the power of what that means. And I just think it's been a fun journey, man, to do this with you as a friend. and to also tell people like there's life after politics, right? You can still be friends, and what we had then wasn't just a facade, right? Like, and that's what, to me, I hope as those electeds that are there now and people that are thinking about running for office, right? It's not just about the title of mayor or being a supervisor. It's the collective experiences that you and I have had, and we've talked about it because we actually did ship, and we got into the trenches.
I'm just glad one of the outcomes that we have from season 1 is that you've finally recognized that being mayor is the most important elected position
I never said
in local government.
That's
what I remember. I'm going to check the edits, but I'm pretty sure.
I never said that. I said it is an important position among many. But it's been a pleasure, man. So
thank you for bringing us along this journey too. I appreciate it. Cheers.
I'm going to get my lunch schedule back now for a period of time.
You can have dessert on Mondays now.
No dessert, just a longer meal.
Okay, Alfredo, here we are in our happy place on the porch, wrapping up season 1. What do we have to look forward to in season 2?
For season 2, I'm excited about, bringing more guests. We heard from people, John, that they like that, and we accomplished a lot, right? This was two friends having a conversation over a cigar and a glass of wine, or a couple of glasses of wine, and we did it. We got some diversity of opinions out there, but for season 2, I like the perspective of principals, of owners, but giving us behind the scenes, not the, hey, look at me, but here's what I have to do to support this. Hotel owner like Rick Coffin could be an example. Ed Costa from the Carneros, Resort and Spa. Maybe some folks, I mentioned professional staff, from the city and county, because we talked a lot about electeds. I'm interested in that. And then, sports and nonprofits that are doing a phenomenal job of helping make Napa a livable community for young families. We need all that. So those are some. Napa Firewise might be one of them. You mentioned that a while ago. So we're not done. We're barely getting started.
No, there are a lot of topics that we really just scratched the surface on, and we can go deeper, and having people represent some of those conversations will be, I think, helpful and fun.
Yeah.
I really enjoyed all the guests that we had. Appreciate them spending some time with us. Hopefully we'll have a lot of folks that have been listening to us subscribe, tell friends, share comments on our platforms with YouTube and Spotify, Apple Music. We may be adding some platforms for starting in season 2, so we can broaden our reach a little bit. So I think it's, I'm very happy with how season 1 has gone. From an idea that we weren't sure where we were going to go to where we are now and where we can go in the future. I'm really looking forward to it.
Look, it's quite simple. Don't be lazy. If you're listening to the podcast, drop a comment, share it with people and friends, right? We're not asking you for money, which we have in previous lives.
Wait, what?
Right, but share it, because I do think, I look at this as an extension of public service, John, right? We called it public comment because, we had some fun with it, but we're taking a lot of time to create something of value, and I really believe that, right? Of creating information, making sure people are aware and engaged and can be engaged, and we're facilitating that. So, if you are a fan, and we have many of them, I think that's the request.
I've really enjoyed reading most of the comments.
I haven't.
I know. I share them with you anyway, but I do hope that we get even more engagement from folks, get some ideas of what would you like us to talk about.
Well,
and so I just think there's a lot of opportunity for our next season.
Well, look, this is our Napa Valley, right? Where we go, it's what we make it. And we've created a platform for information, and I think we did a good job also of giving a perspective of what it's like to be an elected and a former elected. Because a lot of the times, you and I were labeled as, you guys are just politicians, you're business, leaders. There's a ton of shit we had to know, right? We had to talk about housing in depth, not just talking points that you get from AI. Like, we had to know the stuff. DEI, we talked about that in depth. Immigration, and I don't think people see that. And I think that's another color and lens that we provided. Because a lot of the times, our friends, even my friends, are like, well, what do you guys do? I'm like, it's a lot. It is a lot that we have to do. And this is an avenue to provide that. And the very first episode, now I'm kind of reminiscing. We reminisce on, if we would do it again. And I think our answers are all over the place. But I hope that people see that being elected can be an incredible opportunity. But being a community member is just as exciting. But it takes engagement. So get engaged, listen, get involved, email, comment. We don't have to agree with you. I probably won't read them, but John will. But it's part of creating this magical place we have.
Yeah, it's a wonderful valley. We've both lived here a long time. I mean, I'm approaching 30 years here in the valley.
I thought you were gonna say 30 years old. I was like, no, not true, but go ahead.
and it's such a special place. We love it. And because of our background, we have access to information. We have network of friends and colleagues that we can continue to talk to and really kind of share some of that with the public. And we can do it in a very personal way.
Well, look, we're doing this podcast, as I said, again, an extension of public service because we care.
Yeah.
Right? It's not like we have giant shirts of John and Alfredo's podcast, right? Like, we're not out there doing that. We're doing it to create information, to provide people information that's relevant based off our collective experiences, right? I think some people thought we were going to do that, but we didn't. So now it's like it's here. We're going to do another season. We're going to keep talking about, the nitty gritty and things that matter to our community. But like you said, if people have an opinion or a thought, by all means, let us know so we can continue to provide, that important information for the community.
Well, it's going to help us know that the audience wants us to keep talking. Now, some people are going to say, just shut up. But I think we're having fun with it, first and foremost. And then we're educating folks. We're sharing information. I'm excited about it. I've really enjoyed it. I think Caleb, our producer, has been fantastic and has really made us sound better than we probably should. Definitely look better than we should.
What are you talking about?
But, it's just been a lot of fun. One of the topics I really look forward to is the general plan update.
That is terrible.
Cheers.
I don't want to. I do not want to end on that. We
Yay.
cannot end on that. No, absolutely not, John. What I will say, the general plan's going to happen regardless.
General plan.
No, Jesus Christ. But what I will say is, we're two former electeds on a porch, having a cigar and a glass of wine. You're from Oakland, right? My parents came from Mexico. And the fact that you can do this, I think we don't want to gloss over it, right? I just think that's so cool. And it's so cliche to say, man, but I've had a good time doing this with you, man. So cheers to that.
That's a much better toast.
Not the fucking general plan.
Cheers.